The following podcast is recorded and produced by Emerge, a media creators co-op.
Good morning. Instead of our regularly scheduled good afternoon at 3 p.m., we're coming here live this week, a couple hours early, 11 o'clock a.m. Eastern Standard Time. This is the Defion Productions podcast. I am your host, the hardest working nobody in Bitcoin, Don. We're still here. We're experiencing a little bit of a dip the last couple of days here in the markets, but we're still here. We're still alive. We're going to talk about some of that stuff to start off the podcast today. Jumping into the charts, we can take a look and see that Bitcoin is currently sitting at $111,614, holding the $111,000 line. In the last day, it's down 2%. In the last 7, it's down 5%, although to some of you, it may feel like much more than that. Ethereum taking much bigger of a beating, down to 4,000, holding the $4,000 line. It did drop earlier this morning. I did see 3,900 and some change. Looks like it recaptured the 4K, and it's sitting slightly above that. Down double Bitcoin in the last 24 hours, and it's more than double down in the last 7 days, down 12.6%. So ETH taking a beating. Bitcoin dominance is rising again. Looking down, you got XRP down 9%. Solana taking the biggest beating of all. Solana was starting to have a breakout. Now it's down almost 20% in the last 7 days. Dogecoin down 17. Cardano down 13.8. Chainlink down 14. And you just go down and see the red across all tokens. Many in the 10 to 20% range, with Bitcoin being at the 5. Although it seems like a lot. Bitcoin may not go up the most in these type of cycles, but it definitely goes down much less than everything else and recaptures dominance. Total crypto market cap back under 4 trillion at 3.82 trillion, down a couple percentage points the last 24 hours. Fear and greed index is slightly at neutral. It was at fear the last couple of days, ticked to 41, neutral. So, you take a look at the market here, and you go through your timeline on social media, and you would think that, Bitcoin is trading at $10,000 again, with how fearful people are and how scared, especially people holding altcoins, are. This is, the beginning of the fourth quarter in a couple of weeks. Fall officially started a couple days ago. Believe it or not, the last couple of cycles, we did have a dip in September. And I looked at a chart yesterday. 2 of the 14 or 15 Octobers in Bitcoin's history have ever been red. Every single other October has been green. We call it Uptober. So we hold this for the next couple of days to a week and a half. We'll probably get that Uptober again and start that parabolic run that we normally get around this time, the year after the halving. People are throwing their price targets out there still, even in these, dire times for people, with Bitcoin trading only 15% off its all-time high. I'm seeing anywhere between 135K to people talking about 200K. And then you got the crazy, podcasters and influencers looking for clicks that are still saying $1 million is in play this cycle, which I think is absolutely insane and crazy. But they get their clicks, and that's what they do. I got a tweet here that I'll pull up just to bring things back into context. This is from Simply Bitcoin. Shows how people. Oh wait, when I clicked it, it went away. How people think it's like to hodl, just a great straight line up, and how it's actually like hodling, and it's just got pitfalls, fires, floods, tanks, armies, hurricanes, natural disasters, choppiness all along the way. That's the reality that we experience hodling. But when the prices start to go parabolic, we're in price discovery, and Bitcoin's sitting at, 125, 150,000. Everybody's like, oh my God, you're so lucky. It's so easy, thinking that this is our trip, when we all remember, especially in times like this, that this is the reality that we experience as Bitcoin hodlers. it is not easy. You watch your asset go from, 69,000 to 15,000, all the way up to 124,000, and then, sitting at 111. And you have some people saying we may dip under 100K depending on certain metrics and charts. Who knows? I'm not a chart TA guy. I have no idea. So I don't subscribe to those types of things. It's good to remind yourselves and take a look at things like this. So if we pull this up here, we have a comment. My eyes are really bad this morning. Top isn't in, I think it says.
Top isn't in, not even worth discussion, not talking about where the top is worth a conversation.
I agree. I actually agree. Top is 100%. I mean, nothing's ever 100%, but I would say it's 99.99% the top's not in. These are the type of dips, like I said, that we get in this part of the cycle. And it's not even that big of we're down 5% in the last 7 days. And on my timelines that are Bitcoin heavy, people are you would think that the price dropped down to 10,000. Like I said, you would think that the sky's falling and the crypto market cap is back to 1 trillion. And, it's just wild. Like people's philosophies and ideologies and experiences. And this is a good conversation, Rich, on why it's so difficult for people to accumulate wealth, because they're not willing to experience volatility and these tough times of assets going down. I mean, look at a stock like Amazon. I like to use the Amazon example. If you look at Amazon's early days, it had like a 97% drop right at the beginning. And then it had like 2 or 3 other 90% plus drops in its first like decade of existence. And here it is as like one of the most successful Mag 7 companies 25 years later. I mean, the guy created the company out of his garage. So, the people that held all the way through, somebody that owns a bunch of shares of Amazon now, you're like, man, you're so lucky. But if you really take a look at a chart of Amazon and see those first couple of years, so many people sold out because they couldn't take that volatility.
Well, even established companies, like I know 2 guys that tell me the story about Apple. They had Apple stock from the very beginning, and then Apple crashed there for a little bit because they had a couple they fired Steve Jobs and all that stuff. When that happened, it was like everybody sold their app. Well, that's over. IBM's the king, right? IBM computers are the king, and everybody sold their Apple stock before, and then all of a sudden, now look at Apple. Apple's the best thing that ever happened was probably firing Steve Jobs the first time.
Yeah.
Them resetting, understanding the way they ran the PC and the computer market back then, they had to adjust, and that was why they realized there were so many other things they could be doing with technology and computers, but people didn't want to just have faith in what the company had started up. They had their run. People are so impatient with. It's funny because I think when you see crypto, I think you've talked about this. We want it to happen quickly. Like when you think of like stocks and gold and all that stuff, like we look at it at 100-year, where we're looking at Bitcoin from a 14-year or whatever it is, window. Mm-hmm. We're trying to take like the entire existence of it and condense it to this short period of time. So we're also like it has to this market moves so much faster than say everything else that all the established.
It does, and and part of it is you get these price predictions of people saying, "Oh, Bitcoin's going to $1 million," or Michael Saylor talking about, like I just saw this morning. He put like 2048, or I think it was 2048 or 2043 base case, bear case, and bull case for the Bitcoin price, and it was like everywhere from like the bearish at 3 million to like 48 million being the bullish case. And it's like people want that like tomorrow. Like they want to get $1 million Bitcoin like now. Like why can't we get it this cycle? Why can't we get to 500,000? And it's like, we're going to, I wholeheartedly believe that we're going to see some insane price targets and price discovery and prices reached for Bitcoin in the future. But like, you got to temper your expectations. Like if you take a look, like in 2015, which is 10 years ago, this thing was a couple $100 and it's 100x that. You know what I mean? Like you got to really take a look at like how far we've come, and the higher the price gets, the harder it is to do 2Xs and 3Xs. Like a 2X at 10K, is much easier than a 2X at 100K. You know what I'm saying? Like it takes a lot more money to come in and push those prices and push the market. And then like you have now these sellers that come in and they have their price. No matter what guys like us that, somebody that's watching this podcast or somebody that watches a lot of Bitcoin content or is a Bitcoin maxi, you just hodl. There is no sell. We're not selling, but there are so many market participants in this market that they have price points that they're looking for that they do sell at. And, there's a lot of psychological ones, like maybe 120,000, maybe 140,000, maybe 150,000, maybe 200,000. Like who knows? Like people are here for many different reasons, and they have good life reasons that they may need to get some liquidity for, and they may have to sell some of their Bitcoin for that. Like there are a lot of hodlers. There are a lot of people like me and others that don't plan on selling anything, but there also are a lot of people that are in this market to trade. And they're either doing leverage or they're just holding it for a certain number, and then they're going to sell it at that number. And along the way of getting to those bigger numbers, we're going to have those.
And I'm not in that market so at all. So like when you hear, like, as you're on it all the time, like what are the kinds of numbers that people think are their like exit points or like top or bottom? Like is there like kind of not obviously there's not one, and you're not one of those people, but like when you're out there, like what's the neighborhood of the magic number that people think it's going to top out at? The average guy, the trader, the guy that's trying to make money quick or something, or even the bottom when they would want to get out.
If I had to like off the top of my head say where I think the consensus of a lot of people think this cycle is probably going to be a top at would probably be around 200. And I wouldn't be surprised if we don't hit 200 because people think that is the consensus and they start selling before that point to try to front run it. I don't know. Me personally, it could be as low as 140 might be it for us because we're sitting at 111 here, right? The all-time high, which just got hit less than a month ago in August, or a little bit more than a month ago in August, was 124K. So going from where we're at now, 111 to like 140 or 150 would be a pretty big move, 30-40% move from here. That'd be pretty big. Right. And typically, if we are still on this 4-year cycle thing, if you subscribe to that theory, the top should theoretically be hitting somewhere in the next 30 to 45 days. So running about 30 or 40K in 30 or 45 days is about $1,000 on average per day. That's pretty good, I think. Right. I think it's a pretty good return. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see 140K, 150K as the top, quote unquote, the top for now. What I'm more concerned to have a conversation about, honestly, it's more appealing to me than what the top's going to be or when it's going to top out, is what 2026 is going to look like. Because 2026, if you subscribe to the 4-year theory, is typically supposed to be that bear market. And typically you take the whole year to bleed. It takes about 12 months, and we bottom out typically around December of that midterm year. Like we bottomed out in, it was 2018, December of 2018. We bottomed out December of 2022. That's when we saw the 69 to 15K. And, I'm seeing people saying, the law of diminishing returns. We got a 3X last cycle. We might get a 2X this cycle from the previous cycle. And we went down, I think it was 79% or 77, between 77 and 79% was the last bear market. So people are saying maybe this bear market we get 70%. Because it's the law of diminishing returns. It's also the law of diminishing losses. And I think in theory that makes a lot of sense theoretically and logically, but we didn't have the institutional adoption any of those prior cycles that we have now. So although I think we still could only, I say only, and I use that very loosely, top out at 140 or 150, I don't necessarily subscribe to that, meaning let's say we top out at 150, that we're going to go 70% down to 45,000 next December. I don't necessarily think that has to be priced in just because we top out at 150 or even 70,000 or 75. Like, I don't know. Like do we get these typical bear market drawdowns that we've gotten before with all these BlackRocks, ETFs, treasury company buys. Like the only thing
now that it's more part of the
yeah,
establishment, yes, like it's not the percentage of people that think that it's going away is significantly lower than it once was. Bitcoin specifically. So I agree with that. I feel like you can look at anything that holds value. A sports franchise. A sports franchise, once they get to a certain level of accomplishment, they're always going to have a set of base fans. It's never going to drop down to none. Like, even now, like as bad as like say the Patriots are, they're still a loyal fan base because they had so many good years. They're like, what am I going to be a jerk about it? So they're going to be loyal to that thing. And I feel like once you're kind of the establishment, like, and not that it's completely the establishment, but I feel like, yes, I feel like those percentages, like you're saying, my little bit of background makes sense that that law of diminishing losses should be less.
There is one thing that I think could change that and make it repeat of what other cycles have done in regards to losses. And that would be something happening similar, but not the same thing, but some sort of black swan FTX like event that happened at the end of last cycle, which could be one of these Bitcoin treasury companies blowing up. Something like that could potentially be a catalyst for a drawn out bear market in 2026. And again, I'm not predicting that. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm just saying that for me to subscribe to the idea that we're going to drop 75% or 70% in 2026, I think there would have to be some sort of black swan catalyst event that would happen that would make that occur, because that's what we got with FTX blowing up and Celsius blowing up and Voyager, all that stuff that happened at the end of 21 that kind of like led into that top and all that happened after. I think we would need an event like that to happen for us to experience the bear market that some people still think is going to happen. But I think void of any of that, I think we'll still get a regression in the price, maybe a cool off of the price and what you may call somewhat of a bear market. But I don't necessarily, like you said, like things are going a little bit faster in this ecosystem than in the traditional markets. So, it took a company like Apple, a couple of decades before it got mature and didn't experience those huge swings like that. Right. So, this has been a decade and a half. So if we're accelerating the timetable, maybe like we're going to start to see a more mature asset that's not going to have those ridiculous drawdowns that we've seen in prior bear markets. If you want to put the screen up real quick, which I was starting to talk about this before we jumped into that idea there. It's good to just remind ourselves like what we're dealing with here. And gold is at all-time highs. I mean, I think gold drew down a little bit yesterday, but it's still flirting with its all-time highs. It's over 3,700 an ounce. And you got gold, Bitcoin, and fiat currency here, looking at money, durability, divisibility, fungibility, portability, verifiability, scarcity, and its track record. And you got each one of the assets across the board, and you got a positive if it does that, or a negative if it doesn't. And for durability, while all are physically durable, fiat currency over history has not maintained purchasing power durability. Gold and Bitcoin get a plus in the durability aspect. Divisibility, physical gold is only divisible to small pieces. Bitcoin is divisible to 8 decimals, and obviously fiat currency is divisible by dollars and tokens, but gold is not. Fungibility, gold and Bitcoin are fungible, but fiat currency is not fungible with other fiat. US dollar is not fungible with Canadian dollar. So you got the fungibility, Bitcoin plus, fungibility plus for gold, negative for fiat. Going down to the next one, portability. This is a huge one for Bitcoin. Gold has high value to weight ratio, but compared to others is still heavy and cumbersome to transport. Obviously, you can get a briefcase of $1 million and carry that. And Bitcoin can be carried on, a ledger device or in your wallet or on a cell phone or however you decide to do it. But gold, if you want to carry large sums of gold in U.S. fiat value, it would be very hard to do so, and it's very heavy. Verifiability, this is a big one. We have the conversation about Fort Knox. Like, is the gold in Fort Knox or not? Verifiability, both gold and fiat currency have been counterfeited. Gold can be verified, but only through cumbersome assay. Bitcoin can be verified 24/7, 365 on the blockchain. Fiat currency can be counterfeited. Gold can be counterfeited. And we don't even know how much gold exists, which gets us down to the next one, the scarcity aspect. Gold is scarce, and again, we don't know how scarce. We only guess and assume how scarce. Bitcoin is scarce and finite. The only constraint on fiat currency is willingness of government or central bank. So fiat has the negative here. Bitcoin and gold have the pluses in scarcity. The only place where Bitcoin has the minus is in track record. So it's, we give it demerit points because it's only been around for 15 years, where gold's been around for 5,000. Even fiat's been around for 100 years. Gold has the longest track record as money and maintaining purchasing power. Bitcoin's history is the shortest. Fiat has a poor track record. So it's good to just remind yourself and take a look at a chart like this, that of the we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 aspects of money. 6 out of 7 Bitcoin checks off. 4 out of 7 gold checks off, and fiat only checks off 2 out of 7. So sometimes it's good to just remind yourself what you're dealing with, what asset you have, zoom out of the charts, and just remember the fundamental thesis of why Bitcoin exists. Another good post here from the Bitcoin exchange. This is very important, in my opinion, to chart and to take a look at. Bitcoin exchange balances in September. Bitcoin is coming off of exchanges. What that means is people are taking Bitcoin off the exchange, off their Coinbase wallets, off their Gemini, Kraken, wherever they have, whatever locality has wallets, and they're taking it to self-custody, which is huge because it means that there's less Bitcoin on the market when people go to market to get it, which helps to increase the scarcity aspect, which helps to eventually make the price go up. So 74,182 Bitcoin were withdrawn from exchanges in September so far. It's pretty big number. And then there's things like this. Everybody can relate to working some sort of job, whether you work now or you have worked in the past. You know what it means to trade your time for money. We all, in some respect, even if you're in financial services, in financial markets, you're trading your time for money. Imagine working 50 hours a week, begging your boss for a 3% raise, only to watch Jerome Powell print 30% of the money supply in 24 months. You skip lunch to save $12. You clip coupons like a prisoner cutting hash marks into a well. While BlackRock just YOLO'd billions into Bitcoin ETFs and makes your savings account look like a Blockbuster membership card. Fiat isn't money. It's a subscription service to your own slavery. Bitcoin is the unsubscribe button. And then I like how Matt B down here, fiat isn't money. It's a subscription service to your own slavery. I like that as well. Like that, like fiat is not, if you take a look at the chart that we just shown, the 7 properties of money, fiat is only 2 out of 7. So how do we call fiat money if the 7 properties of money, 5 of them, it doesn't fit? Right? Like when you think about it, like everybody covets dollar bills. Everybody covets the paper, the linen and the cotton and wants to accumulate so much of it. But like fiat doesn't really serve the purpose of being money, and it sure as hell doesn't serve the purpose of a savings vehicle. It's our denominator. It's what we use to denominate value of things, but it sure as hell doesn't preserve buying power. And I have another video from our favorite video. I know Rich, you like his content and the things that he produces. This is Jack Mahler's again. This is a good one from a couple of weeks ago. Trust in the dollar is either gone from Russia, fading from China, or eroding India. BRICS nations are now forcefully migrating to a neutral reserve system. Gold is leading. Bitcoin will follow and win over time. The post-1971 fiat regime is dying in real time. Let's listen to Jack talk about it for this minute and 47 seconds.
China's Yi pushes a new global order flanked by leaders of Russia and India. I'm sorry, were you the one that ordered the truth, the quiet part being said out loud? Was that you? Yeah, here's an extra large order of the quiet part being said out loud. Trust in the dollar is either down or gone. Depends on who you're talking about. In Russia, gone. China, pretty much gone. India, It's getting there. It's getting there. The U.S. Treasury is no longer the world reserve asset. Russia, China, India, the rest of the world are going to rotate out of U.S. debt. They're going to rotate into neutral assets. What the BRICS nations are doing is saying, we're going to take all of our surplus, all of our export profits, we're going to sweep it into gold and Bitcoin. We are living in a neutral reserve era. Gold is going to lead Bitcoin. Bitcoin is going to follow and outperform. Bitcoin is going to win over the long tail. And the BRICS nations are forcing this. That's exactly what they're doing. This is Vladimir Putin's advisor. This is the top of the top, saying the quiet part out loud. The United States is trying to rewrite the rules of gold and Bitcoin. These two sectors, gold and Bitcoin, are essentially alternative to the traditional global currency system. And he's claiming over time, the U.S. national debt will be placed into stable coins, and they will devalue that debt. They will devalue that debt against what? They will devalue that debt against Bitcoin, you guys. I'm never the one to say, I told you so. All of us in the chat, we were so right on the Jack Mallard show. We've been saying it. But I would never be that guy. I would never be that guy. But if I was that guy, we would say, told you so.
Such good content. It doesn't hurt that he's wearing a Chicago Bears coat. I think he's from Chicago. I actually didn't realize it. When I saw the video, I'm like, oh damn, he's wearing a Bears. For the fans that don't know out there, I'm a Chicago Bears fan. Unfortunately, I hate to admit that sometimes, but I like the Bears attire he was wearing, and obviously the video is really, really good. And getting on the topic of what he was discussing, I really do believe that the stable coins are really what our United States government and the current administration are really focusing on. And Rich, there's a much bigger conversation at play that Jack was proposing with that video. The United States is going to use stable coins to devalue their debt and use Bitcoin to devalue it against. So instead of the U.S. treasuries that we typically have these other countries buy from us to help, all our fiscal nonsense and games that we play, they're going all in on the stable coins, which is obvious with the passing of the Genius Act, which is the stablecoin bill, and talking about, and again, there was a FOIA. This is important too to cover. Some other Bitcoin podcasters covered it in the last couple of days. There was a FOIA request that was made, and to see if the United States government has done anything to create or make the steps towards a strategic Bitcoin reserve, and they haven't. Spoiler alert, and big surprise. But they are definitely focusing on the stablecoin aspect of things, and I think we're going to see the stablecoin stuff be much more prevalent than a quasi, and I've been saying this since the jump, and I said it before Trump got elected, not to get too excited about this whole Bitcoin strategic reserve, nor do we necessarily need one for anything to really progress. I mean, we haven't had one yet, and Bitcoin has ran double since before. I mean, Bitcoin was sitting in the 60s before Trump was elected, and it's done a 2x since he was elected president. It went from 60,000 over 100 to topping out at 124. So it's done a lot just by him being president. But to throw our eggs in the strategic Bitcoin reserve basket was always foolish. They're not going to do something like that. But what they are going to do is they're going to use the stable coins to try to attack this national debt that we have, accompanied with trying to lower the rates to make our payments less, to satisfy these bases of voters that are like, hey, dude, you said you were going to bring down the national debt. You said that you're going to make things cheaper, and neither one of those two things are happening yet. I would say, and again, we can get political for a second, Rich, and I know this is a good spot for you to jump in because you're much more qualified with your expertise than I am to talk about this stuff. I would say, in regards to prices, in regards to the debt for sure, that promises that were made by Trump and his administration have not been kept. Would I be accurate or would I be inaccurate saying that statement, in your opinion?
If you just look at polling outside of his core base that seems to believe that gas is $2 a gallon, which is nowhere, is it that?
I'd love to visit those places.
Yeah, I drive there, get the gas and come back like with a tanker truck. There is that component that they're just drinking the Kool-Aid and they're always, you got to leave those people out. But when you look
I will say, I agree with you there. I do agree with you 100%, but I will say in the last couple of weeks, the MAGA base has turned on him in a couple of different areas that I never would have thought, and that has happened.
There's so many things we could get super political about it. There's been so many missteps over the last 2-3 weeks by things that they had the ball in their court and dropped the ball through an interception. Things that they could have really capitalized and distracted them from the things that produce prices are up 30% in this country. Nobody's buying our soy. Like all that stuff, the stuff that's killing him, like the core, a lot of his core base, the farmlands, things like that are not. So when you throw that in to consumer confidence and all that stuff, like his numbers are in the tank, so to speak, which helps Bitcoin in a sense, because if people thought that there were things that they expected from him. Some of them were very political. Some of them were very economical, and he hasn't followed through on things. Like he said he was going to end a war. He talks about the wars that he stopped, but the two that everybody kind of wanted him to do something about, he hasn't done anything to. If anything, they've gotten slightly worse. So I know you've gone down the rabbit hole in one of those. And he keeps pivoting on his positions, which erodes voter confidence, not consumer confidence, voter confidence. They're like, what are we doing? Like, you're talking about this, you're talking about that. And I think like that's my take on it. That's my take on it, that you're right. There is a group of really core heavy MAGA people that are feeling voters' remorse. They thought they were getting something from this guy, and they're already saying, okay, who is the better guy? Who's the guy that could really be to replace him, whether it's in an election or if something happens to him or whatever? Who's the guy that we think is really our true MAGA leader? And I think you're right. I think that there's because he has not followed through, and in terms of things that a lot of his core really thought they were getting.
You know what's good about having a channel that's not monetized?
Yeah.
You can't get demonetized.
Yeah, we can't be.
They can't demonetize a channel that's not monetized. So I'm going to say some things without fear of being demonetized,
Sure,
because they don't monetize me.
Yeah.
So they can't take anything away that they're not giving me. The last couple of weeks with the Trump administration, the Jimmy Kimmel stuff being one, and I think that is just, it's free speech is very important, and we can have a whole conversation about it, but it's in the grand scheme of everything, it's not the biggest issue. It's not what is going to move the needle in terms of like everyday life. Right. And again, people can argue and say like we need to have free speech. Like there's sectors and pockets of that there could be good conversations that would make sense. We both talked about this and we both agree that that was a huge misstep. Trying to censor Kimmel was just a stupid move, and that all that aside.
And it was a distraction from when they had a lot of people really supporting them because of what they were doing about the assassination. So they screwed up their lead. They had a lead like in the fourth quarter, and they said, you know what? Let's do this. Let's go for the let's throw the bomb and an interception. All of a sudden, you let the other team back in, and that's really what they did with the Jimmy Kimmel thing. I can't stand Jimmy Kimmel. I don't think he was funny now. I don't think he was funny when he was on the Man Show. But again, but look. Even Sinclair and the other, the North Star, whatever the two channels were, didn't put him back on the air, and it still broke records because of people just wanting to vote or just curious.
I'm going to give you my theory, and this is the part where I don't have to worry about being demonetized because I'm not monetized. This is the part that may get this video. People may not be able to find it. My theory
on the door.
My theory of why the Jimmy Kimmel stuff happened, especially so quick after the Charlie Kirk stuff happened, is because really quickly podcasters, the new media that we have now, which is not Fox News and CNN, people are consuming media from, like, they're getting it fast. Like, something happens and you're online on YouTube, on X, and you're getting and consuming stuff quick.
Yes.
The narrative with this Charlie Kirk stuff has really went in on how big of an influence does AIPAC and Israel have on our politics? And that fire started to burn, and people were throwing kerosene on that fire, and it was starting to rise, and people on the right were asking the same questions as people on the left. And then all of a sudden, Kimmel says what we both saw in the video to be, honestly, like you said, I don't think he's funny. And I thought that bit was funny.
And it was a nothing burger.
It was completely nothing.
Yeah.
But that was a perfect opportunity for somebody as smart as Trump and the people around him to know, especially somebody like him who understands and he's obsessed with ratings and what works for TV and how to get people like, he knew, if I throw a dart at that, it's going to change the conversation, at least for a couple of days, and give us some opportunity to figure out how to address this other thing. And then all you saw in the news was the Kimmel stuff. That's all it was.
Well, you know,
for at least 2 or 3 days, it was all Kimmel stuff.
I know a lot about broadcasting. I work on the high end of it. I know a lot about broadcasting. Late night's dead. Okay? Late night's dead. Everybody knows it's dead. The layoff of what's his name? Colbert was somewhat political, but more importantly, he was making too much money for that market. That market doesn't exist anymore. I can't believe they gave him that deal. And there's now all kinds of stuff going on with Viacom and CBS and Paramount and all that stuff. It's too complicated to describe. I know too much about it. I go down those rabbit holes. And the funny thing about it is, and you're right, we're going to pivot back. There are a lot of conspiracy theories about that murder and who did it. And that's not possible. I don't know anything about guns. I have no idea. Like, we have so much misinformation.
Honestly,
it's just crazy.
The assassination itself is not as I say this very respectfully. It's not as intriguing to me. I think anything's possible, honestly. Like, any conspiracy that somebody has put forward, could be plausible. All the things, and I don't want to get into them all because I'm not educated enough or understand it enough or have firsthand knowledge to even speak on it.
No, and then you become irresponsible if you start saying something, because even with your platform's not huge, but someone, you don't want to be the one that, well, I heard from that guy, because that's what unfortunately is happening, is people just say things on a lot of these podcasts, have no basis. Well, I talked to a guy or whatever, or I made a thing in Canva, and all this shit's happening, and that is a problem. The misinformation is eroded the trust. And I don't even mean like because of podcasts specifically. I don't think podcasts are ruining trust. I think just across social media and traditional broadcasting, we've eroded the trust because they won't, there's so many different reasons. Whether whether it is because we only have 6 media corporations now, or because of fear of what the FCC is going to say, or whatever it might be, lawsuits. It's a hot mess. And ultimately, way it comes back to this podcast, in my opinion, is because, and you and I talked about before the air, is the way because of influential groups that pay for everything.
Yeah, the more interesting conversation to me is what he was doing leading up to his assassination, and what he was talking about, and who he was talking about, and the conversations he was having, and what blowback he was getting because he was asking just logical questions. Like, it's okay for him to ask questions to the other side and have dialogue about that. But when he talks about a specific topic about what's going on with the influence that a foreign nation has in our government, in our politics, in our everyday life, and what kind of financial influence that is, all of a sudden that's a problem. And you can't have those types of conversations in this country because for some people, you have to be Israel first and not America first. There's the part that I would have got demonetized for if I was monetized, but I'm not monetized, so I don't give a shit. It doesn't matter. You can't take money away that they don't give me. So that's the part that's more intriguing to me. And I'm not here to say if it is or it isn't. I like interesting conversations. I like when it comes to money and when it comes to finance, there's two things, and again, you talked about this because I have gone down these rabbit holes the last couple of days. There's two statistics that have to be talked about, in my opinion, that when you're not allowed to talk about it, makes me want to talk about it more, right? When you tell me I can't talk about something, I want to talk about it more, right? So the two things that I find intriguing that we can't have a conversation about that people get upset about are, number one, 80% plus of Congress on both sides of the aisle. This isn't a right or left thing. This is both sides of the aisle receive funding from APAC.
Yep.
You want to say what APAC is, because you understand it more than I do.
APAC is essentially a Israel-backed financial organization that funds politicians.
They've lasted for how? They've been in this country for how long?
1960.
I saw a snippet of Nixon talking about them in the early 70s.
Yeah.
So they've been in our politics for
Forever.
a long time. So that's not like a new thing.
It's older than you and I.
It's not a new thing. So there's a grip. Like, they've established a grip. That's for sure.
And even like things that Israel's influence, comments about Israel's influence on entertainment, and things like that within the media as well, our filmmaking and things like that. It's just really, really very interesting. And I think since October 7th of that date, they have overplayed that, because there is enough new media that isn't controlled by that wants to talk about it. And that has scared a lot of people, scared a lot of powerful organizations and people, and they want to distract from that. And even this last week, that stories that did not get played was the amount of countries that came out at the UN and said they recognized Palestine as a country. Whether, I don't want to get into Hamas and all that
it's more
stuff.
theatrics,
But there is a pivoting. That would have never happened 10 years ago, because America was too powerful. And there is now a sense by a lot of these countries that are coming out and are saying, you know what, we just don't, the same way they don't look at the dollar, they don't look at America. Let's be honest, and I've gone down rabbit holes on this, the 19th century was Britain's century, the 20th century was America's, and the 21st century is going to be China's. It's got to be. You can see it's happening already. And it doesn't mean we're not going to exist as a country. It just means we're not going to be what we once were, because we've made too many missteps, mainly with our financing, more than anything.
I'm going to preface this next statement that I'm going to make to be completely clear that I'm not being anti-anything, and I'm not targeting a certain segment of people, by saying that I'm Italian. I'm 100% Italian. And Italy, the country that you can track all of my lineage back to, that I still have family that live there, that some of my family members talk to, is a complete mess. Italy is an absolute economic mess. Decades of slow growth, one of the highest public debts, demographic declines, low birth rates, bureaucracy, inefficiency, regional disparities. It's a mess. Economic mess. Their economy almost collapsed, right?
Yep.
And if a non-Italian said that, I would not call them anti-Italian. I would call them logical, that they're making a logical assessment of my country that my family comes from's economic problems and what's going on there by producing numbers and showing stats. Okay? So I'm going to say that. I'm going to preface that with the next thing I'm going to say, because I've posted what I'm going to tell you now on social media, and I've gotten at least 5, possibly more, direct messages calling me anti-Semitic by just posting what I'm going to tell you that I posted. Okay? So we'll talk about that. 2% of the United States population is of Jewish descent. Okay? You can't dispute that. Anybody can, while I'm talking right now, you can chat GPT that or AI that and find that statistic. 2% of the 315 or 20 million people in the United States of America are of Jewish descent. The second stat, 65% of Fortune 500 companies in the United States are either owned or run by, being a CEO or CTO or CFO, someone of Jewish descent. So 30 times what the population is in this country of that specific demographic has a stranglehold of power on the companies and corporations that basically run things. That's media, that's finance, that's Hollywood, that's across the board. And I'm not being anti anything. I just told you stats. 2%,
and
65%.
Let me throw in two steps while you're talking about it, because of that 2%, and I Googled this and I looked it up just to confirm my numbers, they did a poll back in September of this year, right now, the month we're in, that only 31% of American Jews support Israel's campaign in Palestine. So
that I didn't know.
It's not even like it's again, you have to separate a religion from a country. Like it's a country
or a people's ethnicity
yes.
towards a country.
And I
yes,
again, I
100%.
mean, like I think people have to understand and not get so emotional about the concept of the country of Israel versus the religion of. We understand what Jewish people throughout history have been through, and it's terrible. It is awful, but it's more important to understand that a country is making political decisions, whether it's based on the religion or not doesn't matter. It's based on that's what I think, and that's why people are afraid, because people are starting to stand up and say, well, wait a second, I didn't know this. We weren't taught that in school. Wait, they're doing what? And we didn't know because of, like you said, because the wealth that's in, and again, I say it all the time, we have 6 media companies, 8 if you want to count other things, that are controlling 98% of what you see on your phone and television.
Republicans that don't like Joe Biden are not considered anti-American. And Democrats that don't like Donald Trump are not considered. I mean, the other side may see it that way, but it's not. The reality is they're not. They just don't like that person that's in power.
Sure.
So for us to take a look at another country and another man that's not a United States citizen that runs another country, right, and the influence he's having in our country, and not in another country that doesn't like Trump and hates Americans because they don't like Trump. That's not logical, right? You shouldn't hate the people of that country because you don't like the country's leadership. That doesn't make sense, right? It's not logical. So what's intriguing to me, to get back to the whole conversation that we were trying to have, is I don't understand why we can't have these conversations and ask these questions, and it's so problematic, and it causes people to act so aggressively towards you when you ask these. Now, if there's a good explanation, I would love to hear it, and I would love to know why that's good for us and why that's something that we should be applauding. But to get back to Bitcoin and get back to what this whole movement is about, this whole experience of me seeing all of this since the assassination and recognizing how big of a stranglehold another country has on us and our people goes back to the money needs to be changed even quicker than I thought before, because the power and influence that we're allowing another country to have on us only exists because of how the money, the fiat money, exists in its current form, which allows the printing to happen, which allows people to be put in power, which allows our lives to be influenced by that other nation. That's the problem that I have, and that's where I see Bitcoin as being a way to break off the stranglehold that we have, whether it be that country or another country coming in here and influencing us and not allowing us to. I mean, it's crazy because you have, and when you really think about it on a macro level, you got a president that changes every couple of years, you got congressmen and senators that change every couple of years, but you have an organization that's been in there since the 60s that are putting people in, influencing them, because it's if you want to keep your job, then you have to do these certain things. And then it's well, look at Nancy Pelosi, look at Feinstein, look at Chuck Grassley, look at Mitch McConnell, Chuck Schumer. You start looking at when these people, and there's other names too that I probably don't even realize, that have been in power since the 90s or the 80s.
And there's a lot of politicians,
and they stay there because of the funding they're getting from these other organizations.
There's a lot of politicians that I really like, that I like them as, I think they're decent people. And even if I don't agree with their politics, I think they're decent people. And even some of them, how long it took them to come out and say anything negative about what's going on. And it's weird because these wars, not that they're directly related to anything. But we know that the Iraq and Afghan war cost us something like 8 or 9 trillion. That's all part of the debt.
we can account for. There's probably
all
more
part
that
of the
we
debt,
can't.
and now we're not paying that debt off. So it's obviously with through same way your mortgage goes up if you don't make payments, it goes up and up and up. So we know that our existing debt is what, 30? Is that where we are
37
now?
plus.
So we know that a third of it, probably higher, is based on wars that we just printed ourselves into.
Yep.
Which is why Bitcoin's why this exists.
Yep. All right, let's go to the last couple of articles before we finish out for this morning. Here we got a tweet by River. 165 days until there's only 1 million Bitcoin left to be mined. For a reminder, the last million Bitcoin will be mined from 2026 till 2140. So it'll take 115 years to mine the last million Bitcoin. It's always wild to conceptualize that and think about that.
What year will it be done?
2140. We'll all be
Will
dead.
You sell then?
My great grandkids.
Sorry, lighten it up a little bit.
Yeah, we got a little crazy there for a minute. Huh? All right, next one. This is why it is absolutely vital that Tesla keeps its Bitcoin and why every company should be buying more. Tesla holds 1.25 billion in Bitcoin, which is 11,059 BTC, and 36.8 billion in cash. Now zoom out 15 years. Cash melts at 6.26% per year from M2 debasement, average over the last decade. That's fair. 36.8 billion erodes to 8.4 billion real money. Bitcoin at 25% CAGR is 36 billion. Bitcoin at 35% CAGR for 124 billion. Bitcoin at 45% CAGR is 427 billion. That's the opportunity cost. Holding safe dollars means you bleed purchasing power until nothing's left. Holding Bitcoin means compounding into a black hole of value that fiat cannot stop. Tesla's orange bars soar while the green bar flatlines. Every CFO staring at a pile of cash should be asking, do I want to protect my shareholders' time or watch it decay in fiat quicksand? Bitcoin is the only corporate treasury strategy that actually works. Going back to MicroStrategy started in 2020 with $500 million. They have Bitcoin today worth 72, well, depending on what price we look at or what price time where the price is at, around 70-ish billion dollars. And it's a company I think that's only making like 18. They don't really make any money in from the products that they have. They make like $18 million a year. It's something ridiculous. Let me see strategy. Oh, I was off. Their revenue is their actual revenue is 462.3 million. What are their profits? I don't see their profits. But I mean, it's the Bitcoin they have in their balance sheet is 140x where they started their first purchase of 500 million. Pretty good strategy. All right, on to our next article. Carl Menger, only 21 million Bitcoin ever, but y'all out here crying over this baby dip. Sell now or quit the tears and start stacking sats. I've read enough whiny comments. I actually feel that sentiment going through my Twitter feed the last couple of days. You would think it's the end of the world in the Bitcoin community. For some people, you would think that this is their first cycle, and for some, it probably is their first cycle. But for others that I know have been here for multiple cycles, I don't understand what the crying is about and why they're fear-mongering and fudding and thinking that, the sky is falling. Like, we've been here before, many, many times before. We've had harder and harsher dips before, and we always come back. I don't understand why people are crying so hard. The next one, gold moves first, Bitcoin follows harder, patience pays, Q4 awaits, and it's got the Bitcoin versus gold 100-day lead, showing that, gold leads and then Bitcoin lags behind and shoots off harder. And the last article here by Joe Calasari. People will make up every excuse in the world for why Bitcoin isn't running. Paper Bitcoin manipulation, blaming the TGA refill, the cycle theory. Have you ever considered it just needs to consolidate after massive moves in 2023 and 2024? I think that's a really good tweet to just kind of think about, like, especially this podcast here has encompassed basically this whole cycle. We started this podcast, me and Troy, in August of 2022. The price was around 20K and dipped down to 15K the first couple months of this podcast. Nobody was watching because nobody cared about Bitcoin, because everybody thought it was over. They thought it was going to zero. And it went from that 15K in the end of 2022 all the way up to about $100,000 more than that, plus up to $124,000 from 2023, 2024, and here 2025. So 3 years, we added over $100,000 to that number. So some consolidating after those big moves is not crazy. Healthy pullbacks, healthy corrections, and consolidating is what healthy markets do. No asset goes up forever. Like, I fundamentally do not understand people that think that Bitcoin, and maybe it's because they hear it, like we talked about a half an hour ago, Rich, people throwing the 250,000 number out there, or even Michael Saylor tweeting earlier his 2048 bull cases and bear cases and the millions and millions of dollars of Bitcoin. Like, that's not happening tomorrow. Things have to consolidate. There's going to be pullbacks. There's going to be corrections, and then the moves up will be bigger than the corrections. Last cycle, we had like 6 plus 30% plus declines with a couple 50% ones in there. Like, and the price went up, from 3K to 69K with 30X from the low to the high. And here we are from 15K to 124K. Like, and we've had a couple of declines. And I think this cycle specifically, we've had a lot more smooth, choppy consolidation than many other previous cycles, which could say that we've matured quite a bit, which makes me believe that we're probably not going to, knock on wood, get a 75% bear market drop like we've got in the past. But like, some of these dips are normal dips. And if you're one of those guys that's waiting for your altcoin bags to jump, I don't know what to tell you. Like, that, if you're not Bitcoin only and you're sitting there waiting for your Solana bags to pump or your meme coin pump fund bullshit nonsense to pump, like, I don't know what to tell you. This isn't the channel for you to watch. You should go watch some other nonsense that's going to talk about all that ridiculousness. This is Bitcoin only here. We talk about Bitcoin. We tell you about the markets, tell you my conviction, my not selling, my hodl strategy, my Bitcoin maxi ideology. Do I have a monopoly on truth? Of course not. Am I going to be wrong? I hope so, because I want to learn from those types of things. I always forget, Rich, I'm just so bad at it, to tell people to subscribe, like, and all that nonsense. And I say it at the end where people have probably already tuned out by that point. But if you're still
across the bottom of the screen,
if you're still watching, I encourage you to please subscribe to the channel. Get me to a point where somebody could demonetize me, because right now they can't.
Monetize him first.
Monetize me,
a couple bucks,
so I can make the tweet about YouTube demonetize me, and I can cry about it like everybody else does when they get demonetized. So give me that opportunity. Just kidding. But yeah, please subscribe, like, share, all that nonsense. I did share this in the Bitcoin Army on X. Bitcoin Army, if you're not a part of that Bitcoin Army and you're a Bitcoiner, get on the Bitcoin Army. They run a space every single day of the week. Some days I think they have like 3 going at different times. I do my best to jump in and listen. A lot of good ones going on. A lot of really, really good signal. A lot of really, really good voices. Michelle, Rob Satz, Killer B, Stacy. Shout out to all of them in the Bitcoin Army, and many others. As always, like we do 104 times before this and for the 105th, don't trust, verify. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week, back at 3 o'clock next Thursday. Peace.